This week I was working on a video for you. I brought lights into the living room to film an intro to show you the flowers and small bottles that would be painted. I even did a thumbnail sketch beforehand, which I filmed in its entirety. Then began hours of painting and filming and uploading. Pretty much the whole day was dedicated to this one painting video. But to be honest, that final painting was disappointing and I really didn't want to share it. But that would mean that I had wasted an entire day of work. I was praying / grumbling to God about this wasted day, and the thought hit my mind, paint over it in oils. What a strange idea. I wasn't even sure where my oil paints were. It had literally been years since I've used them. I even had to go on YouTube to find the video on how to use liquid medium. It had been so long I'd forgotten. So I took that acrylic painting and I treated it as an underpainting and just started laying oils right on top, and wow, immediately I saw quite a transformation, and that's what I'd like to share with you today. Stay tuned. I'll list the colors I used in the drop-down description box below this video. I also used a sheet of Jack Richardson Gray Matters paper palette, and I just put that inside my acrylic Stay-Wet box, and that worked so well. And then I was able to put the lid on it overnight, and I just checked it this morning and everything looks great. So I think that's how I'm going to be storing my oils. I will also include the brushes that I used in the drop-down description box. So for most of this painting, I'm going back over it with a similar color palette to what I used originally, except for the background. I changed that quite a bit. So for example, on these flowers, I did them originally with ultramarine and white, and I'm going back with that same color palette. But gosh, I had just forgotten just the beautiful blending quality and the softness of oils. If you've never used oils, one of the things I struggled with, I used to paint equally with oil and acrylics, and I was a dabber. I would go back over the same stroke over and over. I would mess with my strokes too much, and that's not good with oils, because then you're going down into the layer that's beneath it and you just end up with a muddy mess. But now that I'm put down more definite strokes, it was interesting painting this, just the softness and lushness and fullness I could get with the oil paint. I just love it. But another issue is sometimes people struggle with that fat over lean, having to do oil paints in thinness and thickness layers in order for the properties to work. By using an acrylic painting as the underpainting, I didn't have any of those issues at all. Everything, I'm using fairly thick paint. I'm just dropping it right on top of what was there, and it just did beautifully. It handled really beautifully. I already had my roadmap of where I was going. I'd worked out the composition with the acrylic painting. It was just a lot of fun. In fact, I'm thinking, what other acrylic paintings do I have that I can go over them with oil and just kind of see what difference I can get. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing some videos on that coming up soon. I will say, if you've watched many of my videos, you know Sap Green in acrylics is one of my very favorite colors. I use it a lot. And it is an oil also. And I've tried different companies. Most of the manufacturers that I was using for this oil painting are Gamblin. But the Sap Green was a Winsor & Newton. And it's just different. It's a beautiful green. And it was worth getting it from that company. One of the things that I love about oil paint is the soft edges. You can go back over that dark green with a lighter green, and it's just going to melt into it like butter. You don't get a hard edge like you do with acrylics. It's just different. If you've never used oils, I really encourage you to try. And again, maybe going over acrylic might be a good way to break into it. About a year ago, I did invest in a set of water-based oils, and I did a video on those, and I just did not like working with them at all. I know a lot of people love that product, and there are a lot of great reviews out on YouTube about water-based oils, but for me, they just did not handle like real oil paints. I say real oil. They have the same pigments. It's just the cleanup is different. I think the molecular structure is slightly different, but I really prefer, if I'm going to do oils, I really like this better. And see how you can just drop in some color at the throat of that sunflower, and you just, by barely touching it with your brush, it just blends out beautifully, seamlessly. It's just amazing, the blending properties with oil paint. Oh my goodness, I'd forgotten. I was remembering the many negatives in my mind about oil paint, but there are a lot of positives too. Another benefit, that hot pink flower at the top, even though I painted that a while back, because it's an oil, when I went back over it with the light pink highlights, again, you just get that seamless transition. You don't get any hard edges. It's I think it is easier for me to work with because I've become more experienced handling paint and handling a brush. Like I say, when I first started painting, I was such a chronic dabbler that I really struggled with it. So I'm finding it much easier this go round. One thing that I did not like about the original acrylic painting was the background. I went over that background multiple times with fairly thick paint trying to get an expressive background, and it just kept kind of fading out on me. It just wasn't fun, it wasn't exciting. But I am using a turquoise over this coral color and letting some of that shine through, mixing in a little bit of the greens, using big strokes, and I am absolutely loving what's happening to the background of this. I turned the painting upside down just to make it a little easier to work with. And again, the blending properties of the oil, and you'll notice I'm trying to be real careful not to touch those flowers because they're still wet, but every once in a while one of those colors will bleed into the background and it's just beautiful. If you don't like it, you can go back over it with thicker paint, but the little kind of happy accidents that happen with this, it just makes it look more painterly, more expressive. I just love it. I wanted to show you how I was dropping that darker shadow in, and with shadows, it's typically darkest right next to the object and then it gets lighter as it goes out, and that's a soft transition, and it was just so easy dropping in a little more white. I also like where the background meets your tabletop or whatever, you can get a very soft line there as well. So I'm just got a little lighter on my brush and I'm just gently going back into that same paint, softening that up. Just love it. It's also pretty easy to add highlights, and if you make a mistake, you can just paint over it or wipe it off. Here I'm just going back in. I wanted to make that flower a little bit larger, so I'm taking the tip of my angled brush and I'm adding in some of the darker pinks, just increasing the size of it a little bit, and then going back in with my pink, and it just blends beautifully. It's just, gosh, I really encourage you to give it a try if you never have. It's just a beautiful experience. As I think about it, most of the painters, the artists that I follow online, they all paint in oils. I just have been fighting that, but gosh, this has really been a fun experience today. So let's compare this before painting in the acrylic and the after painting in the oils and see what kind of a difference it really made. So here's a close-up of the sunflower in the acrylic. Here we have it in the oil. Huge difference to me. Much more painterly looking. Next we have that pink flower at the bottom in the acrylic, and here we have it in the oil. Next we have the flowers at the top, and notice the background color too. That was a place where I saw such an improvement. And here we have in the oil. In the background, just lovely. And the strokes are just very painterly. I just love it. I feel pretty sure this is not going to be the last painting that you'll see from me where I have acrylic as the underlayment with oil on top. If you'll subscribe and like this video, I would appreciate it so much, and that way you'll be sure to get the next free video that's coming out soon. Thanks so much. God bless.